I always wished that there was a video such as this in YouTube. Now, this is the way you have to connect modern history and connect world history with respect to the same. And this will make the reading of historical background much more interesting and much more fascinating. What do you mean by the philosophy? The philosophy, basically, you have to start with the concept of constitution. You understood that there are more clarity required, there are more revision required. So you read it once again, you revise it once again, after which only you skip to the next chapter.
I started my full-fledged preparation after I joined the Ultimate Assessment Program at Civilsdaily.
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 There is a 12-month strategy which I have done on Civilsdaily platform only.
I reached out to the Civilsdaily team.
Civilsdaily.
Current affairs में Civilsdaily.
Civilsdaily.
Civilsdaily. With Civilsdaily.
Civilsdaily. Civilsdaily.
A mentorship program of Civilsdaily, and that did help me a lot.
So good day everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So today, as you have seen in the pre-webinar video, we are going to beautifully, surgically analyze on how to read the Laxmikanth. You know, even during my preparation, as I said in the pre-webinar video, I always wished that there was a video such as this in YouTube. Even before doing the video, I actually searched in YouTube. I saw videos of Shivin sir, I saw videos of Sunil Alavasa sir, but then most of the videos actually explains on the chapters. Let's say he's going to give a 2-hour lecture on the chapters. Rather, none of the videos actually basically explains on how to read the Laxmikanth in a comprehensive manner. So I wish this video was there during my preparation, and I hope this video is going to be useful for all of you. So first of all, regarding the source, as most of you know, in case of Polity, almost 10 to 15 questions happens. I mean, in case of prelims, as in case of mains, is one of the most significant topics. In case of prelims, 10 to 15 questions are asked every year. And out of that, maybe 13 to 14 questions directly come from Laxmikanth, and 1 to 2 questions come from current affairs. So you don't need to look elsewhere. Laxmikanth, as always, people say, is the Bible for Polity. You don't need to read D.D. Basu. You don't need to read any other books. I mean, for the political theory alone, maybe you can refer to the Making of the Constitution 11th standard, and also regarding the political theory textbook, which is there in 11th standard. Apart from that, Laxmikanth is the go-to book for Polity. So we will be today going through the chapters which you have to read, and also on how to read the chapters as well. So as I said in the pre-webinar video, the first and the foremost thing before going through the textbook or before going through any book is to go through the PYQs and understand which chapters you should read, which chapters you should revise, and what are the chronology in which you have to read and learn the same. So if you actually go into the PYQ, you will understand that most of the questions have come from judiciary here. You can see almost 24 questions have come from judiciary. Fundamental duties and rights, almost 19 questions have come from the same. Political theory, almost 22 questions have come. DPSP, Union and State Executive Schedule, Parliamentary Procedures, these are the most significant portions. And when you come to the least significant portions, as you can see here, the State Reorganization Act, only 1 question has come. Citizenship, Article 5 to 11, only 1 question have come from the same. Writs, 2 questions have come. Attorney General, beat emergencies. So always before beat polity, beat environment, beat all the other portions such as history, always go for the PYQs and understand how the questions have come. This will give you a better understanding on which of the areas you have to revise and read maybe thrice or 4 times in your preparation. Now you understand most of the questions have come from Parliament. Most of the questions have come from fundamental rights. Now what do you need to do? Now you need to analyze from which area from Parliament that most of the questions have come. Now it's not that you need to read the whole Parliament and give importance to all the topics in the equal manner, right? No, you should not do that. Rather, you need to understand which of the areas from Parliament has more weightage, and you should be focusing more on that. Now, when we actually go into the Parliament chapter, we understand that Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, in case of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, 9 questions have come, which is actually very significant. Presiding officers, beat the speakers and the deputy speakers, 5 questions have come, which is also significant. Sessions, beat the monsoon, budget and the budget session, not so significant, only 2 questions have come from the same. Devices of parliamentary proceedings, beat the motions, non-conference motion and other motions, only 3 questions have come from the same. Now this is the way you have to analyze, okay? It's not that, as I said before, you need to read the whole Parliament again and again, but then read the whole Parliament once. But when you read for the second or even for the third time, focus more on those areas in which UPSC have tend to ask more number of questions. Now, as you can see here, Parliament Group and Forum, in case of Parliament Group and Forum, or in all the 11 years or even the 10 years, none of the questions have come from the same. So should you read Parliamentary Group and Forum? No, right. So going through the PYQs also give you an understanding on which areas you have to skip as well. In case of Parliament, you can definitely skip the Parliamentary Forum and Group because none of the questions have been asked in the last 11 years. Now, after you understand how to read Parliament, now what do? Obviously, you have to read the Parliament, right? So you read through the whole Parliament, after which you have to do, since Polity is a more conceptual and more factual, you need to go through the PYQs and also you need to do the objective policy was a document. Not in case of objective polity to be precise, you can do any of the test series. And after doing the test series, if you have more than 50% accuracy, then what do you understand? You understand that you have significant knowledge regarding the same. You have understood most of the concepts. But then if you have less than 50% accuracy, let's say out of 10 questions, you were only able to solve 3 or maybe 4. Now, what do you understand by that? You understood that, okay, I have read it once, but I have not went deep. I have not conceptually understood all this thing. Now, what do? In case of less than 50% accuracy, you need to read once more because you understood that there are more clarity required. There are more revision required. So you read it once again, you revise it once again, after which only you skip to the next chapter. But then if you have more than 60 or maybe 70% of the accuracy, you can directly skip to the next portion. Now, also, as I said in the previous video, in the webinar video as well, once you have read Laxmikanth for the first time, okay, you need to make notes regarding the same. Now, you don't need to make notes regarding all the topics, let's say fundamental rights or even DPSPs. There is no note for you to make the same. Okay, you just need to read from the Laxmikanth. But in case of comparisons come, let's say President and Governor, Chief Minister and Prime Minister, let's say the Parliament and State Legislatures, State Legislative Assembly and also State Legislative Council, let's say Money Bill and Financial Bill. In all the areas wherein a comparison is possible, now what do you need to do the same? You need to prepare a table for the same. Okay? In case of first reading, you read the chapters, you attempt the questions, you understand whether you have good clarity regarding the same, after which what do? In case of comparison is possible in this chapter, you make a note, and for the second and also for the third reading, you don't need to read the whole Laxmikanth once again. Rather, what do you need to do? You need to go for tables, which will actually significantly reduce your time in case of your revision as well. Now, let us directly go to how to read the Laxmikanth. This is because of the reason why you have joined this webinar, right? Now, first of all, should you read the latest editions? Now, the Laxmikanth, this 8th edition has come, I guess, on August 8. Now, should you go for that? Or is it possible for you to stick with the old editions? Now, definitely let me tell you, why does these new editions come? It's like coming with a new iPhone, right? It actually tempts a person to buy the same. But then let me tell you, in case of Laxmikanth, there are no too much editions in the same, okay? Look, if you look into the 7th chapter here, what are the new chapters that have been introduced? The first one is the concept of constitution, which we will learn anyways from the 11th standard making of the constitution. Consumer commissions, be it whatever, this you just need to Google it. You just need to research a bit and you can make notes for the same. Constitutional prescriptions, not required. National Commission for Women, Protection of Child, National Commission of Minorities. This is all which you can Google and find out the information regarding the same. Be it the Bar Council, Law Commission, be it everything. Okay. So if you have the 5th edition or even if you have the 6th edition, just stick to it. You don't need to buy every new edition that they provide because it's just for them to earn money regarding the same. So never buy the new edition. If you have not purchased for the book, go for the new edition. But then if you have the old editions with you, you can just stick to them. Now, what sequence should I read it? You know, as I said in the pre-webinar video, I made this mistake, right? What did I do? I went for the historical background. I read it. I did not understand anything. Then after which I closed the Laxmikanth. Now, what should you do? If you go and read the historical background, if you go for the constitution framework, you will feel the same. You won't have any interest in reading rest of the book. So therefore, always go for the philosophy of the constitution, okay? Do not go for historical backgrounds such as the company rule, crown rule, making of the constitution, which is of very factual in nature, such as what are the symbol of constitution, who actually wrote the constitution, who was the constitutional advisor to the constitution, how many members were there, 299 or is it 300 members. These are very factual areas. Therefore, it will be very boring. It will be very hard for you to understand, and you don't need the polity to be boring in the initial few courses, because polity is the subject that is the most interesting in case of UPSC, in my opinion. So therefore, don't go for the constitutional framework. Rather, you start with the philosophy. Now, what do you mean by the philosophy? The philosophy, basically, you have to start with the concept of constitution. Now, if you are going for the 5th or the 6th edition, there won't be the concept of constitution in your book, obviously, okay? Because it came in the 7th edition. So the concept of constitution came in the 7th edition, therefore it might not be there in your book, but then it doesn't matter much, okay? Even in case of the concept of constitution, there are hardly any 3 to 4 pages. You can just Google them, okay? Or you can just go for the PDF of the same. Therefore, you don't need to buy the book. After reading of the constitution, you understand what constitution is, right? Because Laxmikanth is all about understanding about the constitution. So this will give you an understanding regarding what constitution is, what is the difference between constitution and a constitutional government, what are the qualities of the constitution, what are the advantages of having a constitution. So go for what is constitution, after which you go for the silent features. Now the silent features will give you how our constitution is. Is it written? Is it the lengthiest? Is it federal form? Is it a parliamentary form? Is it having unitary nature? This will give you an understanding on a broad understanding on how our parliament is basically based. Okay? After which you directly go for the preamble. This is how we start the philosophy. We go from the preamble, after which go for the fundamental rights, then go for the DPSP, and then go for the fundamental duties. Okay. Always go for the philosophy, which is actually the most interesting part. You can watch n number of YouTube videos, n number of documentaries regarding the same, which will actually make your process very interesting. Okay, so go for philosophy and don't go for the very boring historical background regarding the same. Now, how do you read it? As I said just now, after reading the part 1, now part 1 here, I basically mentioned here refers to the part 1 of the Laxmikanth book, okay? Not part 1 of the constitution. I'm here referring to the part 1 of Laxmikanth, which basically deals with all the preamble, silent features, fundamental rights, duties, and also the DPSPs, okay? This is a part 1 of Laxmikanth. After which, the part 2 basically deals with the parliamentary system and federal system, okay? Okay, so after reading the philosophy, what do? You just go for part 2, which deals with parliamentary system and federal system, and also includes center and interstate relations and also emergency provisions. But then do not go and read the center-state relations, interstate relations, and also the emergency provisions, okay? Because if you don't know how parliament works, would reading simple majority, special majority, and also the different provisions, let's say the date and timings, would it give you a better understanding regarding the same? No, right? So always, now in case of center-state relations as well, this is more of revision in nature, right? It actually deals with what will happen in case of emergencies, what will happen in case of ordinances. Now here, you have not gone into what an ordinance is. Here, you have not gone into what an emergency is. You have not gone into relation between the president and also the state. So always, don't go for center-state relations, don't go for interstate relations, and don't go for emergency provisions. Rather, after reading the philosophy, what do? You directly read part 3. Okay? And what does part 3 refer to? Part 3 in the constitution, okay? Part 3 refers to basically fundamental rights. But in case of Laxmikanth, part 3 basically refers to the executive, the central government. Okay? After reading the philosophy, go for parliamentary system, federal system. Don't read center-state relations and interstate relations and also emergency provisions. Rather, go for part 3 of the Laxmikanth, which deals with the central government. Now, when you read the central government, don't go like after reading president, you go for vice president, then you read prime minister, then you go for council of ministers. No, it is not the way you have to read it. Okay. Now let's go to the chapter wise. Okay. Now the first part, it is already which I have said in the pre-webinar, but then since it's going to the YouTube, I have to basically explain the same. So first of all, regarding the historical background, as I said before, don't go for historical background in the initial phases. Okay. It will be very boring. It will be very hard for you to understand. Rather, you go and read the modern history. Right. Now, there is a significant reason why the government has introduced the Regulating Act of 1773, right? So in the Laxmikanth, it's not much mentioned, but then you know that it's basically all the company officials, for example, Robert Clive became one of the richest persons in the planet because he actually received a lot of bribe from Mir Jafar and all the other different personalities. The Diwani system was implemented, or the dual rule was implemented in Bengal. Therefore, he actually became very rich. There was a systematic failure. That's why the Regulating Act was introduced in 1773. Now, this information you don't get from Laxmikanth, right? Rather, you will only get this from Spectrum or from any of the classes with regard to modern history. Now, this is the way you have to study also. Also, as I said in the webinar, you have to mix the world history as well, especially in case of 1830. It's actually that year when the European traders were actually allowed to enter into India. Now, what is the reason for that? It's because the Napoleon basically introduced the continental system there. And the continental system, what does it do? It basically doesn't allow any of the Britishers to trade with the Central Europe. Now, that is why the Britishers basically needed, the British traders needed many other places to trade. That is why they opened up India for the British traders. Now, this is the way you have to connect modern history and connect world history with respect to the same. And this will make the reading of historical background much more interesting and much more fascinating. Okay, so don't go for that. Now, when can you read? After reading all the portions from the constitutional statutory bodies and beat any other, you can come back to the front page, and after which you can read the same. Okay, you can read it whenever you want. There's no specific, like after president, you have to read governor. In case of historical background, you can come and read it anytime. Be it making of the constitution as well. Now, when you look into the modern history as well, 21 questions have come from the regulating and all the different acts. So therefore, this is one of the most significant portions. You know, most of the portions are very factual, okay? But then Laxmikanth is very limited in case of the knowledge. So therefore, what do you need to do? You need to go and read the Spectrum by Rajiv Abir, and also you can read the Bipin Chandra Wala book also. Okay? So you can see most of the questions have come from the same 1813. So Regulating Act, none of the questions have come. But with respect to, you have to focus more on the Charter Act of 1813, the Charter Act of 1833, and the most important one, it's actually the Government of India Act of 1913 and also the Government of India Act of 1935. These are the two areas which you have to focus more. So rather than focusing on the Councils Act, Regulating Act and the Charter Act of 1873, it's basically these two portions and also the Charter Act of 1813 and 1833 which you need to focus. Now, this is the level of understanding that you need to have, okay? So when you revise maybe 10 days before prelims, now what do? You don't go for Regulating Act, Charter Act, rather go for all these portions wherein UPSC have a significant number of questions related to the same. Okay? So every chapter, so for every portion, you need to have a table such as this wherein most number of questions have come from the same. Now, therefore, what do you need to do? You can note down in case of constitutional framework, in case of historical background, the most important thing, as I said before, Government of India Act of 1913, 1919, 35, Charter Act of 1813 and 1833. Less important portions, it's basically the Regulating Act, the Pitt's India Act, Charter Act of 1793, and it's all basically the Councils Act as well. Now, is there any area to skip in the Laxmikanth? No, there's no area to skip in case of Laxmikanth with respect to historical background. You need to read all of the book. Okay? Now, the third chapter, which is actually the new edition in the new inclusion in the 7th edition, it's basically deals with the concept of the constitution. Okay. So it gives you a comprehensive idea regarding what a constitution is, what are the qualities of a constitution, what is the significance, and what makes a constitution. Okay. Now, regarding the first page, do not go and read what different people have said the same. You can see here Gilchrist, Gettel, Ware, Wade and Wade and Williams, different personalities have provided different definitions or have said different things about the constitution. Now, will UPSC ask regarding the same? What does Gilchrist say? What does Gennell say? What does Wade say? It's highly insignificant, right? So you don't need to go through what different personalities have said regarding the same. You can totally skip that. Just have a basic understanding on what constitution is. That is the only thing that you need to know. Functions of the constitution, you can completely skip it. Rather, the only important thing in the concept of the constitution is that you need to have an understanding between what constitutionalism is and what is the difference between a constitutional government. Okay. There is a significant difference, right? Now, can you say that currently in India is a constitutional government, right? But can you say that there is constitutionalism in India? Or let's take, I don't want to be politically incorrect. I don't want to create a controversy here. What about Russia? Russia has a constitution, but is there constitutionalism following? Now, there is a significant difference regarding the same, okay? Just having a constitution doesn't mean that there is a constitutionalism in the country. Now, this is a difference that you need to understand here. You need to have a basic understanding regarding what constitutionalism is and what is constitutional government. And UPSC have several times asked regarding the same, okay? You can see here, consider the following statements. A constitutional government is what? A constitutional government is a definition defined by which of the following is the chief purpose of the constitution? So UPSC have asked several times, therefore, go and you need to have a basic understanding regarding the difference between constitutionalism and what a constitutional government is. Okay, so regarding this chapter, have an understanding regarding constitution. You don't need to go for the significance, features and whatnot. You don't need to go into what different people have said regarding the same. Rather, you just need to have an understanding regarding what constitutionalism and what constitutional government is. So areas to skip, functions, different personalities, what they said about the constitution, and also the qualities of the constitution, you can completely skip it. Now moving on to the silent features. Now this is where the philosophy actually starts. This is where the interesting things start. Now in case of silent features, there is nothing to skip, okay? You need to read the whole chapter. This is where the interesting part comes in. This is where the philosophy comes in. So you need to read the whole chapter, okay? And as you can see here, even though we have not provided the silent features in the A table, but then be it the preamble, be it the political theory, it also lays the foundation for the fundamentals and fundamental rights and duties. Therefore, you definitely need to read a silent features, which will give you a basic understanding regarding what the constitution is all about. Now, these are the 14 silent features. You need to read about it. It will give you a better understanding regarding what our constitution is. Now, this is one area that you can skip, okay? Because UPSC will never ask about what different people have said about our constitution. UPSC will never provide a quote, and this is said by which people? Granville Austin, K.C. Bayer, Hanumantha, or different personalities, okay? So regarding the criticisms, you can completely skip it for prelims. Maybe in case of state PSC examinations, you can have a reading regarding the same. Okay, so UPSC have never asked a quote-based question in case of polity, so therefore you can skip the criticisms altogether. Now, the preamble of the constitution, one of the beautiful parts, you need to by heart the preamble. I mean, not exactly by heart the preamble, but then you need to know which all words are in the preamble, which all words have been introduced in the Amendment Act, in the 42nd Amendment Act, and all this together. This is where the philosophy actually starts. So you can see here, 4 questions have been asked by the preamble with respect to the UPSC prelims in the last 11 years. Now, these are those 4 questions. You can see here, the date is important. This is when the constitution was enacted. What was the preamble at that time? Which of the following objectives is mentioned in the preamble? Preamble of the constitution in India is, what is preamble you need to know about? The mind of the makers. So these are the 4 questions which was asked by UPSC, okay? But let me tell you, you need to have a deeper understanding regarding the words which is mentioned in the preamble. Let's see with respect to liberty. Okay. UPSC have n number of times asked about liberty. As you can see here, now liberty is one of the words mentioned in the preamble, right? So here you can see which one of the following reflects the most appropriate relation between law and liberty. Now liberty is there, Now, liberty of thought, expression is one of the lines in the preamble. UPSC have mentioned about liberty here. Here you can see which of the following factors constitute the best safeguard of liberty in liberal democracy. Again, liberty is there. Absence of equality. Equality is another word which is mentioned in the preamble. Constitutional government, individual liberty is again mentioned. So therefore, what do you need to do? When you read the preamble, okay, when you read the preamble which is given in the Laxmikanth, you don't have all the things mentioned about what is sovereignty, what is liberty, and all mentioned there. Okay, some part of the portion is mentioned in the silent features, but then you need to have a better understanding regarding all the terms mentioned in the preamble. Okay, now that is the reason why, especially, you need to read this book. Okay, this is the 11th standard book, the political theory. You don't need to read the whole book, rather, you just need to read about all the different terms mentioned in the preamble. Okay, don't go and read the whole book. Okay, fine. It will give you a better understanding. Okay, with respect to, there was a question in 2018, right? The classless, the classless society is one of the dream of Marx and basically Mahatma Gandhi, right? So that was taken from political theory. Okay, and also the concepts between law and rights and duties, concepts such as liberty, all is taken from the political theory only. So therefore, you can read the political theory. Also, in case of making of in the Indian Constitution and the making of the Constitution as well, there are some concepts such as the definition of state as well. So after reading Laxmikanth, you can actually go into these two books. Okay, you don't need to read the whole book, such as the constitutions, constitutional bodies, statutory bodies, which is all mentioned. You don't need to read that. Only with respect to these philosophical ideas such as liberty, duties, DPSPs, ideas of state, you just need to read these books. Okay, so don't read the whole book. Only for the philosophical ideas, you go and read these two books. Now, there is no area to skip. All the areas are important. Keywords, significance, preamble as a part of, and also the when preamble was amended. You need to read all the whole portions which is given in the Laxmikanth. Now, with respect to union and territory, when you are going in the flow, you can skip all this. Okay, from preamble, you need to directly go for fundamental rights. Okay, but then when you are reading union and territory, these are the things that you need to focus. So first of all, this was mostly a mains concept. Okay, so if you can see here in 2021, UPSC have asked about assess the main administrative issues of social cultural issues in the integration process of princely states. This is basically what is mentioned in the Laxmikanth, the integration process, the integration of Hyderabad, the integration of JBB committee, Dar commission, and also Factual commission. In 2022 as well, UPSC have asked about the same. The political and administrative reorganization of state and territories have been an ongoing process. So mostly it's the mains concept. Okay, so we don't usually read union and territory as a part of prelims. But then in the 2025 prelims, what question came? The question basically came regarding the Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, and Tripura was initially a Part C state, right? So therefore, maybe in 2026 as well, UPSC might ask about the different states, the chronology of the states, and how all these states came into being. So therefore, be prepared. Okay. So what do you need to do? You need to read about the Union of States, the Article 1, difference between Article 2 and Article 3. You need to know about the significance of the state reorganization committees. You need to read about Article 2, Article 3, okay? The most important portions, Factual Commission and its recommendations, the evolution and the chronology of the states, okay? So firstly, there were only 14 states and 6 union territories. Now we are in 28 states and almost 9 union territories. So you need to know the chronology of the same. In 1960, Gujarat came in. 1962, Nagaland came in. All these different chronologies, you need to have a proper clarity regarding the same. Also, the Factual Commission and the recommendations are the most important. But then, in case of less important, you can read into the Commission and JBB Commission in the first case. But when you revise, you can just read into the Factual Commission and its recommendations. Also, there's a significant information with respect to the exchange of territories with respect to Bangladesh. You don't need to know that, okay? You just need to have an understanding that in case of the 100th Constitutional Amendment, there was an exchange of conclaves between India and Bangladesh. That's it. No other information respect to the Bagib about anything is not required. Okay? No such areas to skip. So most important portions, Article 1, 2 and 3, have a proper understanding and the differentiation between 2 and 3, First Lily Commission recommendations, and also go for the chronology of the states. Now, citizenship, one of the least important chapters in case of Laxmikanth. If you look into the PYQs, only one question have come from citizenship, and that too, this is the question. Okay? This is a very simple question. Therefore, what do you need to do? There are a lot of areas which you need to skip in case of reading citizenship. Okay. Now, with respect to this, citizenship is an ongoing issue. Okay. You must have heard about the issues in Gurugram right now. You must have heard the issues about the Bangladeshi immigrants in India, the Rohingya immigrants, and the number of people actually leaving India is also very significant. So therefore, UPSC can ask a question regarding the same. Therefore, you need to understand the same. So what are the areas to focus? Do not go and read the whole chapter. Just stick to what I'm saying here. First of all, the idea regarding single citizenship. What is it? How a person can acquire Indian citizenship, how a person loses the Indian citizenship, and also what is the difference between an OCA card holder, NRI, and a citizen of India, and what difference between a foreigner. Now, these are the 4 areas that you need to focus. Okay? Idea of single citizenship, how to acquire Indian citizenship, how do we lose Indian citizenship? Basically, what are the things mentioned in the Citizenship Act of 1955? These are the only areas that you need to focus. Okay? You can also go through the differences which is given in the Laxmikanth, the difference between the OCA card holder and also an Indian citizen is directly mentioned in Laxmikanth. So you need to read all that. Also, when you read the citizenship chapter, always go for the latest provisions. Okay. So when you read Laxmikanth, so here it is written that by birth, a person born in India on or after January 26, 1950. Now, is it relevant now? Is it relevant now? A person born in India in 1950, does they have citizenship? Is it relevant now? Now, this is not the provision now, right? Now, what is the provision now? Those born in India on or after December 3, 2004 is basically relevant now. Okay. So, what do you need to do? You don't need to read the old provisions, such as you can skip Article 5, Article 6, Article 7, Article 8, Article 9 and Article 10 of the Constitution, okay? Because these basically deals with the provisions of citizenship when India became independent and after which the partition happened, okay? So you don't need to read all old provisions, rather you just need to understand what are the latest provisions. You can read into the latest Citizenship Act of 2019, okay? So go only for the latest provisions and you can completely ignore the old provisions. So citizenship as a topic is less important. So therefore, acquisition, loss, single citizenship, OCA card holders are the areas you need to focus. And what are the areas you need to skip? Constitution articles from Article 5 to 10, you can completely skip it. And also the previous citizenship acts, dates and guidelines. Okay, you can completely avoid the same. Now, with respect to fundamental rights, fundamental rights is where the philosophy kicks in. Fundamental rights makes the polity interesting. So in case of fundamental rights, you need to read the whole chapter, okay? But then there are certain areas which you need to focus more. That is what we are going to discuss here. Now, when you look into the PYQs, almost 19 questions have come from fundamental rights and duties. In case of fundamental rights, almost 14 questions have come from the same with respect to fundamental rights. This is one of the most significant portion, okay? You can take maybe 2 days, 3 days in reading the same. So these are all the fundamental rights. You need to have a basic understanding regarding the same. So in case of fundamental rights, let me tell you, from here, we'll actually split the questions. There are factual questions and there are conceptual questions, okay? Now, factual questions are where, when you have a basic understanding regarding the fundamental rights, you will get it. But with respect to conceptual questions, you need to dive deeper into the same. Okay. Now, when you go for basic factual questions, you can see here, you need to just have an understanding regarding what are the articles. Right to privacy is in Article 19 or 21. Right to marry is in Article 20 or 21. These are the very factual, basic questions. Okay. And UPSC is a fond admirer of right to privacy. Okay. UPSC have asked it 3 times. Okay. All these are very factual questions, very general, very easy questions. But when you look into the same, Okay, you can see here that there are some conceptual questions as well. Okay. Now let's take case of in this one. Which of the following statement is right? Rights are claims of the state against citizens. Rights are privileges which are incorporated in the constitution of the state. In essence, what does the due process of law mean? Which of the following is the main principle of rule of law? Which of the following best defines the idea of the state? So therefore, you need to have deeper level of knowledge with respect to the philosophical aspects as well. Okay? You need to have understanding regarding what are rights in particular, what is the relation between the rights and the states, what is the relation between rights and DPSP and rights and duties. So dive deeper in case of the fundamental rights, not regarding the provisions, rather the concepts, the due process of law, procedure established by law. What is the definition of a state? What does rule of law mean? What is the difference between rights, duties, and all the other things? So dive a little bit more deeper with respect to all these philosophical concepts. But with respect to fundamental rights as a concept, you just need to have factual knowledge regarding all the rights. Okay? So also, UPSC have a tendency to ask about the fundamental rights with respect to the judicial judgments, the Supreme Court judgments. Okay. So here you can see that in 2017, you all remember the Hardia case, right? It's basically, I don't want to go into the case, but then this is where the concept of love jihad and everything and all the other things came into the mainstream media and all the other. So after the Hardia case came in 2017, UPSC asked about the right to marry in right to marry, where is it? Yeah, right to marry in 2018. So UPSC have this tendency to ask all the questions related to the judicial pronouncements as well. So with respect to Puttaswamy judgment, which came in 2017, UPSC have asked about 3 questions regarding the right to privacy. So when a significant judgment come with respect to any of the fundamental right and UPSC puts it in Article 19, 21 or be it in any of the articles, you need to read that. Okay? So what are the areas to focus? First of all, you don't need to give equal importance to all of these same. With respect to right to equality, Article 14 to 19, 2 questions have come from Article 14, 1 question have come from Article 16, and a single question have come from Article 17. Okay, so Article 18, Article 15 is not so important. You can go for Article 4, all these concepts. But then with respect to Article 19, okay, 2 questions have come from the same. Article 22, 1 question has come, but then the most important one is actually Article 21, the right to life and liberty. You need to dive deeper into the right to life and liberty. With respect to all the other fundamental rights, not so significant. The right to religion, 0 questions have come from the same. Cultural and educational rights, none of the questions have come from the same. So therefore, Article 33 to 35 as well, UPSC have asked 2 questions with respect to 9th schedule. Other than that, not so significant. Right to constitutional remedies as well, only a single question has come from the same. But then you need to understand about the writs. Okay, writs is a different concepts, but here with respect to Article 32 in particular, only 1 question have come from the same. But with respect to Supreme Court, a lot of questions have come. Okay, so when you read, focus more on Article right to equality and right to freedom of expression. These are the 2 most significant constitutional articles. Not constitutional articles, I would say, because it includes Article 14 to 19 and 19 to 22. Article 14, Article 19 and Article 21, these are the 3 most significant portions. Okay, so when you revise, read more of Article 14, 19 and 21. So most important, Article 19, Article 14, when you read it, have a beautiful understanding what is equity, what is equality, and what is the idea of justice, and also the privileges that some of the Indians have, let's say MPs, MLAs, President, Governor, all these different people. Go for Article 19, most important with respect to citizens' rights, especially with respect to freedom of speech and expression, right to property, and all the other different things. Right to life and personal liberty, most important, and the constitutional remedies, Article 32, with respect to the writs. Less important, martial laws, UPSC have never asked from the same. Exemption to the fundamental rights, only read about, not only read about, go read much more regarding the 9th schedule. Right to religion, cultural and education rights, not so significant. Areas to skip, definitely there are no areas to skip with respect to fundamental rights. Okay, so go for these topics more. But in case when you read for the first time, read whole thing. But when you revise before prelims, go for these topics. Now, these are some of the areas which you need very less importance. As I said, martial law, armed forces, and you don't need to by heart all those areas which are all those basic rights which are mentioned in Article 21 through different Supreme Court judgments. Okay, this is something that you cannot never by heart. So don't go for by hearting. UPSC have asked about right to privacy. UPSC have asked about right to marry, which came into being, which UPSC have put the question because of the current affairs, okay, the Hadia case and Puttaswamy judgment. So therefore, you don't need to read the whole thing. Also, criticisms of fundamental rights, you can completely skip regarding the same. Now, with respect to DPSP, now DPSP is a very small chapter. Okay, hardly 3 to 4 pages are there. So you don't need to skip any of the following. But then, first reading, you can read the whole chapter. But in case of second reading, you can skip all the main smaller portions. So you can see here, 12 questions have come from DPSP. Also, DPSP can also be divided into factual and conceptual questions. Okay. So with respect to conceptual, you can see here that with respect to the provisions contained in Part 4 of the Constitution, you can see here, conceptual questions have been asked. Here also, conceptual questions have been asked. So you need to dive deeper into DPSP and also have a clear-cut understanding regarding Article 36 to Article 51A. Okay? You need to know what is 37, you need to know what is 39, you need to know what is 40, 42, beat anything. You need to have a clear-cut understanding with respect to what is there in DPSP and what is there in fundamental duties as well. Usually we tend to have a confusion between whether it is there in DPSP or whether it is mentioned in the fundamental duties. Okay, maybe two such provisions with respect to wildlife and with respect to the protection of monuments. We tend to have a confusion, I mean, almost most of the times. So have a clear-cut clarity on what is there in DPSP, all the rights, and also which all rights came in Article this 42nd Amendment, and also what is there in fundamental duties as well. So these are some of the conceptual questions regarding the same. But then the factual ones: concentration of wealth, idea of welfare state, separation of judiciary, promotion of international peace and security is included in. So all these questions, to answer all these questions, you need to understand what is there in DPSP and you need to have an idea regarding all the things mentioned in DPSP as well. Also regarding what is there in the secular principles and liberal principles, also what is there in the Gandhian principles. Okay. Firstly, I thought that this was a distinction which was given only in the Laxmikanth. Constitution doesn't have any such distinction between Gandhian principles, secular liberal principles, right? So I thought that question wouldn't come for the same when I actually started reading regarding the same. But then when I went into the PYQ, I understood that there is such a classification. I mean, UPSC have basically distinguished it as well. So the Gandhian is actually a distinction. It's not, I mean, only in the Laxmikanth such distinction is all there. So you need to have an idea regarding secular liberal principles, Gandhian principles as such. So less important areas, the implementation of directive principles, a long list of all the acts are there in Laxmikanth. You can completely skip it. Sanction behind the directive principles, why directive principles were not implemented in the initial phase, you can completely skip it. Directive outside Part 4, you can skip it. Utility of the directive principles, you can completely skip it. Criticism of the directive principles, all these areas are not necessary for prelims. So when you go for the second revision, you don't need to read any of it. Just read it one time. It might be useful for mains. That's it. So with respect to fundamental duties as well, it's almost the same with respect to DPSP. Okay, all the fundamental duties, you need to have a clear-cut idea regarding the same, especially not the articles. You don't need to know that Article 51AH is respect to the promotion of scientific temper. You don't need to have clear-cut idea regarding the same. But then all the articles, you need not know about the specific articles rather. But then you need to have idea regarding all the articles which is there. Just not the is it Article 51AE, is not 51AF. You don't need to have such knowledge, but you need to have a holistic idea regarding the same. So both conceptual and factual questions mostly dominated by factual questions. Okay, here you can see a question regarding the rights and duties and also the fundamental duties with respect to an Indian citizen. Conceptual questions are asked and also factual questions are also asked regarding the same. So TK, you need to know about the fundamental duties and go a dip deeper. Also try to have a conceptual understanding with respect to what is duties and what is the relation between an Indian citizen and the duties with respect to a foreigner and duties. You need to have such level of understanding. So less important areas, criticism of fundamental duties. Do not need to read the same, completely skip it. Sardar Swaran Singh committee recommendations, completely skip it. You just need to know what is there in the fundamental duties right now. Okay? Also Verma committee observations, completely skip it, not necessary. Even for the first reading, you can completely skip the same. Now, after reading the philosophy, you can actually read amendment of the constitution. Okay? The amendment of the constitution doesn't require any previous reading, but then if you don't have an idea regarding the simple majority, what is special majority, then you can read it after reading the parliament portion. Okay? But then if you have an idea regarding what simple majority is, special majority is, you can go for the same, or else after reading parliament and state legislature, you come back and read what the amendment of the constitution is. Now with respect to amendment, you can see here that UPSC have asked 8 questions regarding the same. Okay. And UPSC basically focuses on 2 important aspects here. First one is the procedure with respect to the amendment. Now what are the procedure? You have simple majority, special majority and special majority with rectification of the states. Now does it require the president's asset to be introduced? Is there a joint sitting regarding the same? So these are some of the areas that UPSC have asked. Okay? So first of all, go for the procedures, which is the most important. And the next one is the most important, wherein UPSC have asked about the most important constitutional amendments till now. Let's say about Article 42, sorry, Amendment 42, Amendment 44, Amendment 1. Okay? So go for the most important constitutional amendments and also go for the constitutional procedure with respect to the amendment. So here you can see questions regarding the amendment process, bill amendment in the constitution. Constitution amendment can be initiated, introduction of a bill in Lok Sabha only. Again, a question regarding the procedures, after which you go for the important amendments. Which principle of constitution was added to the 42nd amendment? Constitution amendment was believed to be the overcome the fundamental interpretations of fundamental rights. 44th amendment. Also, in which of the following amendment does the states of total ministers, including the Prime Minister, Council of Ministers, shall not exceed 15%? UPSC have asked regarding the same once again in another year. Okay, so UPSC actually tends to repeat some of the questions with respect to polity as well. As I discussed, right to privacy has been mentioned multiple times, and also article, I guess this is 90. It's 91st, right? Is it 91st or which is it? 91st, I guess. Yeah. Can anyone confirm? Is it 91st? Yeah, I guess it's 91st only. So less important areas here as well. You can skip the mains portions, which actually deals with the criticism of the amendment procedure. You can completely skip it. Now, with respect to the basic structure, now in this case as well, UPSC has not asked any question regarding the basic structure. Okay. So you have all these different concepts which have been introduced in the basic structure after the Keshavandi Bharati judgment in 1973. Now let me tell you that you don't need to read all the cases and understand which was introduced in which one. Okay. You have several insignificant cases here. Let's say Keshavanda Bharati case and the first 9 basic things which was introduced in the base structure is the most important. After which, this is important. Mineral kills case is important. Now, Central Coalfield case, effective justice, is not very important, okay? You don't waste your time memorizing it. Bim Shilhil Singh, welfare state, we usually study it for the mains. Sambat Kumar case, not so relevant. Sambamurthy case, not so relevant. Delhi Judicial Commission case, not so relevant. Next comes the Indira Sawhney case, one of the most important with respect to the reservations in India. Rule of law is important with respect to Indira Sawhney case. Kumar Padmaprasad case, not important. Then Quixote Colohan comes, which is actually very important. It was very a landmark judgment. Raghunandan Rao, not so significant. S.R. Bommai case, one of the most significant portions with respect to center and state relations. You need to know what was introduced. L. Chandakumar case, significant. Indira Sawhney, All India Judge Association. Kuldeep Nair case, not so significant. Nagaraj case, not so significant. I.R. Kolo, as you know, one of the most important cases. Ramjit Milani, Namit Sharma, Madras Bar Association. These are areas which you don't need to focus, okay? So only know about the landmark judgments and what was introduced in the basic structure, and you don't need to read everything which is there in the basic structure. Okay? Now, let me tell you, we won't be going through the whole Laxmikanth in this one session, okay? Because the webinar is usually for 1 hour, and I don't think actually you will be able to focus more than 1 hour. So in this session, we have basically started from the historical, the conceptual background, the constitutional framework to the end of part 3 here. In the part 2 session, we will be dealing with all the rest of the portions, dealing with the executive portions and ending with the constitutional. And we will be completing all the Laxmikanth in the second portion. And also one more thing I would like to add. So here, as all of you know, the dominant prelims, the August batch has started. The batch has started in August 9, wherein the core 1 polity has been completed. But then in 1 week time, we will be completing the core test polity 2 and all the other portions. So what I want to tell you is that, like I have introduced all these portions to you, like I have surgically analyzed all these different areas, which are the areas you need to skip, which are the areas you need to focus. We will be doing the same for each of these portions, each of the exams coming up. Now, before the exam, I will have a one-on-one orientation with you regarding the same to understand whether you know how to read those textbooks. This will be available to you for almost all the portions. Be it geography, we'll have a session, we'll have a one-on-one session regarding the same. Be it history, art and culture, I will be presenting you as I have presented here on our one-on-one session here. So if you want to join the dominant prelims is open. I hope all of you join regarding the same. Thank you once again all for joining. I hope you enjoyed the session and have beautiful insight regarding the same. Okay, so thank you. In the next week, we'll be dealing with part 2 of the polity, wherein we'll deal with part 2 of the session. We'll be completing polity in the next week, wherein we'll deal with executive to the end of the Laxmikanth. Okay, so thank you everyone. Thank you once again.